This lecture will discuss the parts of the nervous system which will later be discussed in more detail. The structures of the nervous system include nerves, brain, spinal cord, and sense organs. Let's first look at the structure of a neuron. And this is going to include, all right, a neuron is going to be a nerve cell. So if we look at this, I have an arrow on the bottom here because this is going to show the direction of the message. It's going to go from this end to this end, okay, and on to the next neuron. So we'll start with the cell body. Okay, so this is the cell body, this whole structure right here. And in the cell body is the nucleus. Surrounding the cell body are the dendrites. And the dendrites are going to receive the impulse, and that's going to be transmitted to the nucleus, which will then send the message down the axon. And around the axon is actually a myelin sheath or covering, which acts as an insulator, which will actually help speed up the transmission of the impulse because it helps keep that inside. And along the axon, in between the myelin, are these nodes of Ranvier, which are kind of gaps where the impulse jumps across. And then the impulse will go to the axon terminals. And in the axon terminals are vesicles which are going to secrete neurotransmitters. And those neurotransmitters will move the message in the chemical form from across the space, which is called the synapse, to the dendrites of the next neuron, and the message will continue. It must happen very quickly. And there's three types of neurons: motor, sensory, and interneurons. And motor neurons transmit impulses from the central nervous system to the muscles and glands. So the central nervous system we'll talk about later is the brain and the spinal cord, and these neurons are going to bring the messages to our muscles so we can move, or glands so they're going to secrete something. Sensory neurons are going to run from different stimuli. So you have receptors for touch in your hands. Those are going to be the neurons that are going to receive the impulse when you touch something that's hot or when you smell something bad. Those are going to be sensory neurons. And then interneurons are the ones that are found only in the spinal cord and the brain, and they're stimulated by signals reaching them from the sensory neurons and other interneurons, or both. Let's talk about how a message is actually transmitted. If this is our neuron, all right, this is one neuron or one nerve cell, and then this is the second neuron here. The message, like I said, is going to move from the dendrites down the axon, through the axon terminals to the next neuron across the space, the synapse. At the end of the axon is the axon terminals, and these terminals are going to contain vesicles that have neurotransmitters. A neurotransmitter is a chemical that's going to carry a specific message. Now, the overall function of the nervous system, remember, is to control and coordinate body function and respond to stimuli from the inside environment and the external environment. So these neurotransmitters are going to do just that, and they're going to tell the body what to do. So as the neuron is getting this message and it's being passed, the vesicles containing these neurotransmitters are going to cross the synaptic gap, which is the space from the axon terminal, and they're going to be received by the dendrites on the next neuron by receptors. Now remember, we're talking about receptors, and they're going to, in a sense, fit together. So they're identified. So certain neurotransmitters fit into certain receptors. Now, that can cause some problems because if we're talking about drugs, drugs can actually do things similar to the neurotransmitters, but they can decrease the amount of the neurotransmitter frequency in synapse, so actually slow down the message, such as in a depressant like alcohol. And what happens is it slows the rate at which the neurotransmitters are involved in the action. So something like muscle coordination or thinking is going to be slowed down. Now, drugs can also increase the amount of transmitter that's crossing a synapse, and this, can also cause it to, stop it from being reabsorbed, because neurotransmitters are recycled, kind of like enzymes. So it gets reabsorbed back into those vesicles. But drugs like cocaine, nicotine, and LSD work like this, And what happens is they fool the brain into releasing a lot of the neurotransmitter, and then what happens is it wears off and the levels drop. So you're actually going to end up feeling good for a little while, and then it's going to um, drop off. And that's why people become addicts, because they want more of that feeling. And that's because the neurotransmitter is being released too fast. And then drugs can also block the receptor site on a dendrite. So there's actually not going to be a binding between the neurotransmitter and the receptor. And the drug can also imitate that neurotransmitter, so it could take the place of the neurotransmitter in the receptor. So things like caffeine and LSD work like this, and so the body thinks that the neurotransmitter is working correctly and will give this similar feeling um, as it would in if it was working normally. So if we look at caffeine, it's going to prevent the neurotransmitter adenosine from binding to the receptor on the dendrite. And adenosine actually causes drowsiness. So when caffeine we drink caffeine or we take caffeine pills, that's going to bind to the receptors, and that's going to prevent the person from feeling drowsy because it's taking the place of the adenosine. And then also caffeine is going to stimulate the release of a hormone called adrenaline, which causes a quick burst of energy. But the body is using up these different resources, and then there's going to be a kind of crashing period when it runs out. So overall, the nervous system is going to be made up of structures such as the brain, nerve cells, and is going to help control the body and respond to different stimuli for safety, as well as to run normal everyday functions.